Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I am joined by a familiar face to many, I'm sure, Aaron M. Payne, also known as Bibliotheory. Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining me today.
No, thank you so much for having me on. It feels pretty cool now to finally be on your stream because I know I've been jumping in and out of your streams for the past really since I've started the YouTube channel and I came across your channel. So now
Oh,
I'm finally here on screen with you. So it's awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
absolutely. I'm honored. Thank you. I always love hearing that people are enjoying the channel. They stop by and watch, and it means a lot because you've since starting your own channel. I'm sure you know how much of a time sink it can be, right? All
Yeah,
the effort that goes in.
no, I
So
understand.
yeah, so if I can make someone's day a little bit brighter, that's all that matters, right? And well, for those who are watching now and who will be watching later in the replay, would you mind introducing yourself, your channel, and your upcoming book? We have a lot of things to
Ooh,
cover because you are
yes.
you're in all kinds of areas now.
No, absolutely, I can do that. My name is, well, when I first started on this YouTube channel, I didn't even say my name for like maybe 6, 7 months. I went by Bibliotheory as
Yeah.
my name for the longest time, and then eventually I slowly just kind of introduced my name here and there, but not just saying it, not out of purpose or out of you know some sort of malicious plan. They're just like slowly introducing my name in there so we can see it change hopefully to when I put out something that was special to
Mm.
me, which is a book, which we'll sure talk about later on as well. But Bibliotheory, Aaron and Payne. I've been on the YouTubes now for almost a year, actually.
Oh
Next
wow,
month will be a year that I officially created the channel.
that's
And
fantastic. Are you going
I
to be
know
doing a little celebration for that?
I have to. I got to do it.
Right. There you go.
1 year booktube celebration stream. I'm not sure just yet what we're going to do, but um, that's a little bit about me, about the channel, right? I'm a booktuber just like you. I love talking about books. And it's really funny on the YouTube space is that not a lot of people read in general, but the people that do, luckily, we all flock to BookTube, where we have a lot of people who are also passionate about books. And I'm
Yeah.
fortunate to have found so many people who are just like me, like you yourself as well, who also like the fantasy and sci-fi genre as its own, little subgenre out there. Because I know a huge majority of people are all about romance and
Yeah.
romantasy, which is fine, right?
Yeah.
But
It's
we
hard to
all have our
find
preferences as well.
similar tastes in terms
Hmm.
of fantasy. That's hard to find because even within fantasy, there's a broad scope of
Yeah.
genres and styles and tropes and, you know, I have I'm sure you have the same thing where you've made friends and you have a lot of things you're on the same level with, and then there's always that, like, 2 or 3 books where you just no,
Hmm.
can't agree on, different tastes on that, so it's hard to find.
No, I agree. And when I came on, I think maybe a year before is when I started really watching booktubers. And the guys that I went to, you probably heard their names a million times. Daniel Green,
Yeah.
obviously, he's one that got me into it. And then also Mike's book reviews. Those are kind of the main two that I watched a ton. And then I got into Petrick, and then
Yes.
Library of a Viking, and then Murphy as well. And that's when I was like, you know what? Maybe at some point I should start my own channel because I have two friends, two personal friends who made YouTube channels, not about books, uh, but they made them about video games. I was like, maybe
Mhm.
I can do that as
Right.
well. But what should I talk about? Books. I look behind me, I see a shelf of books. Maybe I should talk about that.
Hmm, yeah. So why books and not games? Because you also game.
I do game. One thing that's pretty interesting about YouTube and gaming, it's very, very hard to break through in terms of
Mm,
gaming because there's so many gaming channels out there. And at the time, I wasn't as passionate about games as I am about reading because, like, I had goals in mind. I had like page count goals per day to read. Like, I was
right.
playing games here and there. I was just way more
Mm.
focused on reading. I was getting more enjoyment out of it. I was like,
Yeah.
and it's also somewhat of a niche as well. And I love collecting
Mm.
books, and that's kind of why I chose books besides games. But I
Okay.
try to introduce games a little bit though, where I made a few videos where I read like novelizations or books based off of video games,
Yes.
like Death Stranding. I don't know if you've played that game before, but
No.
by Hideo Kojima, he made a lot of games like Metal Gear Solid, and
Mm.
Death Stranding was one that really appealed to me. And I found out there was a book on it. I was like, maybe I can merge the two together, gaming and books
Mm.
at the same time, make a video on it and talk about it. The
Yeah.
video did not do well,
Oh, no.
but I still enjoy the book, so there's always a positive to it.
There's always those videos you make where you're like, "Yes, I'm so passionate about this. It's gonna turn out awesome," and then it's, like, your least performing
Yeah.
video. That's happened to me.
hmm
So, you also have something very special coming out later on in October. Am I correct on that time?
October 4th, we got a little book coming out called Falling into Oblivion. I got me a proof copy right here. Actually, I just got this one, a different one in. It's a little bit bigger today in
Okay.
the mail. It's just like this is a 5 by 8 right here. This is 5.25 by 8. Just to
Right.
test it out and feel it in terms of which one I feel like is better in the
Mm.
hand. And after feeling it, I was thinking I was going to go with the bigger one, but
Right.
after reading through it, I prefer the more narrow one, 5 by 8,
Interesting.
and there's a reason behind it. Um,
Okay.
because the goal of this book is to be a cyberpunk thriller and really a page turner. And when you're going through the text itself, like the block of text is a little bit more narrow. So in my
Mm.
mind, I'm thinking that you're reading through it faster, or at least you're thinking that you're reading through it faster. So you feel like you're turning a page faster than you would on a wider
Right.
book. So
Okay.
that's one
You
of the
went
reasons.
you
Also,
went
it's
for
more
a little
comfortable in
mind
the
trick.
hand.
Okay. And you even did a floppy test on it as well,
Yes.
I think.
Isn't
Yeah,
it the
which
strangest thing?
it's so important.
You gotta have that nice floppy test.
Yes. Yeah, I'm all about the floppy books. They're just it's even better when you go to sit down because I'm the type of reader where I'm small, right? And like 5 foot nothing. So I have pillows on my lap, usually, especially with big
Mhm.
chunky ones. It's just a beautiful thing when you go to sit down to read and they just go they flop right open. They just lay flat. Beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful books. We have a few folks here with us in the chat as well. Another author, JCM Byrne, who writes space opera. We've got Timothy Wolf, another author as well. Look at all the authors in here. We've got 4
Wow.
authors in here. You guys are amazing. Tim
Yeah,
McKay.
Tim,
And
Tim
we've
and
got,
NJ, they're
yep.
here only because the dragon might eat them. So I'm glad you guys are here. Because if not, I don't know, man.
Mm.
But you're here. You made the pass. You're good.
Thank you all for joining us. Yeah, it's I love that comment, the dragon ate 'em. With that being the case, can we talk about that beautiful cover art you had done?
Yes,
Because
right
that is
here.
stunning.
Let's see here.
So who was the author for that?
Her
Or the
name
artist?
is Ninja Joe Art on Instagram, and her name is Katerina Velikova.
Okay.
And when I was going through this process of trying to find art, specifically cyberpunk art,
Mm,
I was just looking really everywhere because at the beginning I didn't know where really to go to get cover art,
right.
and I was just searching uh, up and down, left and right for cover artists, and I found a website called Reedsy, which has a lot of fantastic artists and service providers on there for books specifically. And I actually reached out to a few people on Reezy to get a quote just for an idea that I had in my mind.
Yeah.
Reezy is very expensive, right? It's
Okay.
which can also make sense because they have a really nice backlog or a nice
Mm,
portfolio to them, so they can sometimes, of course, be worth that hefty price because the cover itself is always going to be one of the most important selling point of your book, in my opinion.
yeah.
And you got to spend the money sometimes if you want a good cover, right? But
Mm,
I was not looking to spend 1,000 plus at the time for a cover, and I went on Instagram, just searched hashtag cyberpunk art, and she popped up time and time again. But I actually did not go with her in the beginning. I went with someone on Fiverr,
Okay.
and I had them actually illustrate an entire cover. And I actually sent them pictures of Katarina's work as an examples
Right.
to strive for.
Yeah.
And he did send me back an art, a cover, but then I later found out that AI was used in the creation of it, which
Ah.
is very unfortunate. It was a cool
Mhm.
cover. It's
Mhm.
just AI was used, and I know there's AI is a huge hot topic in really any industry, but also in publishing and
Mhm.
uh, the book industry, especially with art as well. So I did not want to
Yeah.
go down the route. I wanted to actually have an actual illustration and support a human author.
Mhm.
It's just so weird to say that now. Support a human author. But I found Katarina. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna message her and just see does she take commission work or not. And she did,
Yeah.
and she was incredibly reasonable in terms of rates. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go through with this and see, you know, uh, what's it gonna look like in the end result. How's it gonna pan out? And I am very happy that it came out to this
It's stunning. It's
beautiful
worth
book
it.
here. So I'm stunned, absolutely
That it's beautiful, and I am sorry you had to go through all of that to get there, but worth the results, in my opinion.
yeah.
And, Tim says as well, "We appreciate you avoiding, AI." It's a tricky topic, and it's gonna be an interesting interim while it's changing and growing in every, area of society, as you mentioned, so
Yeah.
we can only sit back and watch it. That's what I'm doing. I'm sitting back and I'm watching at this point.
It's
It's
coming out everywhere.
oh,
Everywhere you
yeah.
look, every little app you have now is trying to integrate some form of AI and just push it into your face. Hey, we have
Yep.
AI, by the way. Use it. Use it, please.
Yep.
It's like
Yep.
I don't want to use it. Okay,
Ads.
stop.
"Oh, you make reels? Oh, no, you don't need to make reels anymore. We can make better ones for you." It's questionable. So, being a booktuber, and we're gonna have a bunch of different topics today, but being a booktuber, we gotta ask the staple question, what are you reading?
Reading. Okay, we got a lot of things going on here in terms of reading.
Do you read multiple books? Because 'Cause I'm in that mode right now.
I do, and I call myself a serial starter, a serial book
Okay.
starter because I am constantly starting new books and I don't finish them, and then I end up with a huge, like, currently reading pile right now. So I'm just going to go to my Goodreads because I just finished one like
Okay.
yesterday, and that was A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the reason why I read that one was to really just understand the hype and get into the romanticy genre just to
Right.
see, right? Is there something that I'm missing here in terms of a whole genre that I'm, avoiding, or not really
Mhm.
avoiding, just haven't read?
Yeah.
And as I finished it yesterday, I was actually surprised in a good way. I actually enjoyed that book. I did not. I know when I posted about it on Twitter maybe 2 weeks ago, a lot of people. It was polarizing, really, in the comments. People are saying
Right.
it's trash, it's garbage. Some people are saying I liked it, it was good. So I wanted to
Yeah.
find out for myself, and I actually enjoyed it.
Okay.
Um, so finished that. Also, the Da Vinci Code. I just started that one
Very
by Dan
nice.
Brown, and the reason behind that one is because he is one of the most well-known thriller writers out there. And
Mm.
with me trying to break into the thriller space from a sci-fi
Yeah.
perspective, I wanted to read from the best in terms of thrillers. And I never read the Da Vinci Code or even watched the movie, so I wanted to check that out
Mm.
and read the book first and then watch the movie. All right.
Yes. Well, I did the reverse on that one, but I still haven't read the books, but the movie still gets me every time, and I keep thinking I need to read the
In a good
books
way.
in a good way,
Okay.
absolutely a good way, but, I keep thinking I need to read the books, but then I struggle with those things where if I've digested entertainment in one format, whether it's a book or an adaptation, I struggle to go to the alternative because I can't for example, book to movie, struggle with the characters and how they look. I know they're people and they're real, but they're
Mhm.
different from what was in my head, and things look different from what I imagined. But then there's the vice versa where there's a bit of a letdown in terms of I've watched the movie, I loved it, and the book is a completely different storytelling method, and they both have their place, but I'm like, "Oh, but okay, so this answers a lot of questions, but they didn't they did this extra thing and they did a spin-off on that, and they made a whole other kind of plot line with this thing, but it's not in the book, so what's true?" You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I understand that 100%. Alright, I think the most recent thing that I saw that was, like, adapted, maybe not the most recent, but one that comes to mind is Ready Player One.
Yes.
I adore that book. I've read that book, like,
Yeah.
4 times, because it feels like a cozy, feel-good type of book in my opinion. It takes me
Yeah.
into my gaming passion as well, and I just have so much fun going through that book every single time. So I was super excited to see when they were adapting it with Steven Spielberg also
Yeah.
spearheading it. So I was like, oh, heck yeah. And I came out of the movie enjoying it, but it's in its own separate category in terms, it's like,
Yeah.
it's not adapted 100% at all, which I don't think they need to. I think it's fine. And I treat them separately now,
Yeah.
with the book still being in my favor though. But I understand.
I'll agree to that because I've seen the movie and read the book for that one. I think they did, the book does much more justice to the characters and the
Yes.
actual overarching plot, whereas the movie is mainly for entertainment purposes, and that like, the visuals on it are stunning.
Amazing.
But yeah, you definitely lose a lot from the book.
And besides Da Vinci Code and yeah, I just finished A Court of Thorn and Roses,
Yeah.
I restarted The Fellowship of the Ring
Ooh.
because I was reading it physically, in my hand. I had these really nice illustrated editions right here,
Mm,
uh, illustrated by Alan Lee, and the illustrations are beautiful and fantastic. It's just I was just not connecting to the text. It was taking me forever to get through a chapter, and I was
yeah.
just, for whatever reason, it was just very hard for me to keep going. And then someone recommended to me, actually on YouTube, that I should check out the narration or
Yeah.
narrated version by Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
So I did that 2 days ago or yesterday, and wow, it's a completely different experience. I'm enjoying it so much right now, uh, and I don't know if I can go back. I'm gonna go through the entire series for the first time with Mr. Andy Serkis because it's so much fun.
It I love hearing that. I for me, read whatever format or listen to whatever format works for you to enjoy the story, and,
Mhm.
I'm a big culprit of that. I usually have at least 2 versions of every book that I read because I love doing immersion reading with the audiobook. It just changes the experience.
How do you do that? I never done an immersion read. It's always been one or the other for me,
Oh, interesting.
in terms of either listen to it or I don't, right? In terms of
Right.
reading it.
Yeah.
But my preferred method for reading, I think it would be audio first, and then Kindle, and then paperback, and then hardcover. But as you know, as a collector, you want that
Mm.
hardcover for the shelf, right?
Yes.
So,
It's a tricky, balance, right? Because then you also have to think of your budget for book buying, how many books authors are pumping out because you guys are incredible at that, and how many books you can actually read in a timely manner.
yeah,
How many are gonna sit on your shelf and are gonna judge you from up there?
yeah, I am slowing down on the book buying,
Mm,
and on the book receiving from authors now. Like when I
yeah,
first started the channel, I was like, "Come on, send me the books, send them to me, send them my way." And
yeah,
now I'm like, "Okay, I need to calm down a little bit because I got a lot I got a lot of books here that I still need to read and I want to read, and
yeah,
I don't want to push or hold any authors in a spot to where they're waiting for me to read it, uh,
yeah,
because eventually I am going to read it. It's just when, like, there's so many books I want to read so bad. It's just getting to it, right? Because you have
yes.
this TBR. life, work, other things, writing your own book.
Yeah.
So you understand.
Oh,
You understand.
absolutely. Your TBR grows far faster than you can read, unless you're the type of reader who can somehow manage 2 to 300 books in a year. They're just machines.
I can't do it. I can't do
No.
it. How many books on average do you usually read a year?
I usually average 1 book a week. Now, if there's novellas, I might get up to 60 books in a year,
Hmm.
but generally around anywhere from 52 to 60 books in a year. And to me, I'm like, "Great. That's" I can balance a book a
Hmm.
week, a video a week, plus life. I can do that. But anything more than that, and my brain turns into a puddle. How about
Yeah,
you?
I am around the same. Last year, I read like 58 books.
Okay, yeah.
This year, I'm at 31 or 32. So I'm like in the same boat, right? I'll probably finish
Mhm.
around 50-ish to 60 books, which I think is still amazing
Yeah.
because the majority of people don't read one book a year. All
Yeah.
right, so I think that's still a lot to a lot of people. But then you go look at like Esme or John,
Or
who's
Hamede.
reading, yeah, who's reading 300. I'm like, what? How do
Yep.
you even store all that information in your brain? I don't know.
Yeah, and then process it in time to write a review because they pump out these reviews as well, written reviews and video reviews in John's case,
Yes.
and you're just like, "Uh, um, what coffee are you drinking? How do I get
Yeah.
some?"
In addition to the TBR, I have another TBR that is to be reviewed. And I am seriously
Mm,
behind on my to be reviewed, which I feel very bad about. And eventually
yeah,
I will review these books because I want to give them a full on written review
yeah,
that's um, more than just saying I liked it or I thought it was good. I want to go into the details as to why I liked it in the review,
right.
and it takes me like a whole I need to focus for a little
Yep.
bit on that session and just start writing. And
Yeah.
I need to get to it. I need to.
It's hard, and I struggled with that at first because I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'll just read because I reviewed, but I didn't review as in-depth when I started. And I was like, "I'll just keep reading and doing my normal," and I realized I needed to shift, and so what I ended up doing and what I do now is I will finish writing my review for a book that I've read before I finish the next book. I cannot
Oh,
have 2 books that I've finished completely and have no written review for yet. It, completely throws me off in terms of time because I will also forget what happened in the book previous if I don't take notes, if I don't write that review in time. So for me, that helps in just making sure that I don't have a backlog of to be reviewed. And there are ones that um, I'm sure you found this too, where you want a review, but you also just want to read the book because you want to read it for enjoyment purposes. You don't want to have to
yes.
do a
Hmm.
review on it. And those I will do like a 2 review, but I might end up doing a shorter review just because I did mainly want to read it for my own relaxation, not to report on.
No, yeah, that's funny you say that because recently I stopped using a service called Readwise,
Okay,
where I actually stored all my highlights and notes to a separate service that sent me a daily quote from what I highlighted in a previous book. It could have been 6 months ago, could have been the day before. Like they just send you
interesting.
in a push notification um, alert of like here's a quote that you highlighted in this book 6 months ago, and
Right,
I stopped highlighting quotes now just recently because I just want to read the book and not be, oh, I like the sound of this. Let me think about it a little bit. I want to read the book
right.
and enjoy it and be immersed, experience the book. Right? So
Yeah.
recently
Uh,
just stopped that.
well, I didn't even know that was available, so that is fascinating, but I could see how that could disrupt the experience, but also be overwhelming. It's,
It was cool though. If you like to be if you do highlight books like in Kindle, and it can automatically sync with Readwise, and those
okay.
quotes can be sent to you either email or in the app, and you can go through it. check it out on your phone and say, "Oh, I remember that," and you can say
Mm.
keep it or delete it or discard it. And
Okay.
I did enjoy it. It's just I want to focus more on the reading at the
Mm.
moment for now. So, but if you're
Yeah.
into that, it's a cool app. They have a whole gamification system to it as well because you have like a streak that you want to beat in terms of other people
Right.
having a streak as well. Like
Oh god.
at one point, I was at a year, solid year of reviewing
Wow.
3 quotes every day, and then I went on a cruise and I lost it, and I
Uh,
can't, I couldn't get it back.
Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. No, that's impressive. And, we're not alone here. Welcome, Bo. He feels our pain on the to be reviewed situation. It's such a hard hole to get yourself out of, right? If you build up 5, 6 books that you haven't reviewed yet and they're all sitting there, especially if you only read 1 book a week on average, right?
Yeah.
That's 6 weeks worth of reading. Oh, yeah. I don't wanna think about that anymore. Let's change topic. So, with that being the case, one of the books that you are often chatting about, and you and I have commented back and forth on Twitter as well, is Hyperion, and I don't think we can have this discussion without talking about Hyperion in some form or fashion. So, what is it about this book, this series, that has made it stand out so strongly for you?
Yeah, it's now it's kind of like a joke for my channel now is that people know I love Hyperion. It's in my profile photo as well. Um, Hyperion is a book by Dan Simmons, and it's a book that I actually read through multiple mediums at the same time, which I usually don't do because I have the
Mhm.
physical book on me and I have it on Kindle. And I first started reading it, on the like the mass paperback edition.
Mhm.
Hyperion.
MJ knows what's happening.
And I was making my way through it. I got through a couple chapters, and to be completely honest, I was lost from the very beginning. I had no idea what was happening. And
Yep.
then I was going on that cruise I just mentioned, and I took my Kindle because I didn't want to bring a physical book on me on the boat itself. I wanted to bring the Kindle because it's way easier. And
Yep.
I read that while all my buddies were sleeping in the morning because they're not morning people. And I read that with a cup of coffee while looking at the ocean, reading Hyperion, and that story just stuck with me. Um, I freaking love that book for a lot of reasons. I made a couple videos on it. Um, Number one is that it hits on so many emotional levels.
Mm.
It's probably the book that made me feel the most in terms of hitting home, in terms of being a new father and seeing
Mm.
a relationship between a father and daughter that just hit very strongly for me, and it blew me away. It's a fantastic story. I had so much fun with it. And then you have this crazy shrike creature that's a metal spiked beast that's always looming in the background and haunting our people. And
Just
it's just so much fun because you have 7 distinct stories in one that all converge together for one
mhm.
crazy climactic, not ending because you have to read book 2 if you're once you finish
Okay.
the book.
So cliffhanger, basically.
A huge cliffhanger. It's one of the worst
Okay.
cliffhangers I've ever read because you have to figure out what happens next. Uh, so,
I will get my emotional support chocolate then.
you know, I love that book. I recommend everybody reads it if they're somewhat interested in
Mm.
science fiction at all. But what's cool is that he touches on a bunch of different genres all in one book because there's 7 distinct
Nice.
stories that all have their own unique tropes and ideas and themes and characters. So,
Right.
yeah, I
That's
can talk a while
fantastic.
about that book. I can.
Well, we'll have to come back to it one day. Once I've read it, we'll come back and maybe we'll have a chat about it.
There we go.
Um, because I was actually supposed to read a Hyperion, I don't know how long ago. It's scary that I don't know how long ago. I'm gonna say 3 or 4 years ago, but I suck at buddy reads. That's just what I've learned about myself as a reader. I forget that I was supposed to do a buddy read, and I will even if I remember, I'll go, "Yes, I'm all in," and then something new and shiny comes my way, and I read that instead. I'm just terrible. I'm gonna blame it on the chaos of mood reading.
Yes. Mood ring? Yeah,
And
that's me.
yeah, it's I'm you know how you what did you call your reading? Serial starter?
Mhm.
I just call mine pure chaos, just a chaotic reader. It's I have an idea and then it's just gone. I have a plan, it's gone. I stopped doing TBR videos for the same reason.
Yeah.
But, we've got BA here with us. BA Turner, welcome, good to have you here. And, so in terms of, your you've got your reading, you've got your booktube. We all know booktube takes a lot of time on top of reading because a book is how many hours of reading? I don't wanna think about that, probably 16 to 20 hours a week, more depending on what you're reading. And then you've got recording time, video editing, and then you started writing as well. How do you balance your time? How do you keep everything balanced in such a way where you, 1, don't burn out, and
Mhm.
2, you still put the most valuable things in your life as the priority in terms of your time?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out.
It's
Now,
always the answer,
usually,
isn't it?
like, I have a block of time in the window, or sorry, a time block, a time window in the morning,
Okay.
usually from 5 AM is usually when I wake up until 8 AM, which is when I have to do my day job, and in that time, I can do many things, and
Mm,
usually the first couple hours is booked for me reading for a couple hours, and then the last hour, I usually go to the gym or work out, and at the same time, I'm listening to an audiobook as well while
mm,
working out, so that's about 3 hours a day of reading or consuming books in some format, but
yeah.
when I started writing, that block of time shifted for me in terms of just writing this bad boy and just getting it, outlined and actually just doing the writing. I find my best time to actually write something is in the very early morning, 5 a.m., just woken
Mhm.
up. I get me a little bit of caffeine and I'm just going at it in terms of typing
Nice.
at the keyboard. Later in the day, like after work, there's I can't do it. I cannot write at all
Mm,
at in the evening. It just does not come to me because my mind is somewhere else,
right.
with the family, and it's just not in the right headspace to write at night. So it's really the mornings. The
Okay.
mornings are my time. Also for recording, I try to do that on Saturdays for me
Alright. Okay.
because I don't have to work at 8 a.m. I can do anything I want at 8 a.m. and usually I
Mm,
try to record at that time. And sometimes I have a good idea in mind where I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can record two. I can be a little bit ambitious and record two videos in the same
yeah.
day. Usually it doesn't work out though, because I have to re-record or I messed up something, or it takes me way longer than I thought to say the word hi, and it takes me
Yep.
uh, three cuts or three takes just to get through a single video that should be 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
So
You're just talking about something that's already in your brain. You know what you wanna say, but yeah, I get that. I get the deer in the headlights a lot.
yeah.
Tim came in with, questionable advice. Force your children to format your books. Uh,
She's not old enough just yet, Tim.
yeah,
Not old
okay.
enough.
Just wait a few years. We've got Derek here as well, and Herman. Thank you for joining us. So really, what you're doing is you're maximizing your time management skills. You're figuring out the times that worked for you the best in terms of your creativity and going with it around your life schedule.
Hmm.
That is hard to figure out, and that's going to change constantly. I know you've got little one, but I found that because I used to read in the morning as well. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be super ambitious. I'm going to be the mom who wakes up at 4 or 5 a.m. before my kid does, and I'm going to read. That lasted all of uh, 2 weeks because then my child realized I don't know what happened, but as soon as my foot would hit the floor to
Hmm.
get up out of bed to go read, awake. There's something in my child's brain said, "Oh no, we need to be awake now." 2 earlier than we were supposed to. 2 hours earlier.
That's hilarious. If you're up, all right, I'm up too. I'm coming
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Let's
it's a
have a party.
party. Yes, Tim, it is questionable. So, in terms of managing all of that, you've got a lot of things going. You've got this book coming out, which is a huge congratulations. I would love to know at what point did your brain go, or did you decide, I love reading, but I have a story I wanna write and tell myself. When did that switch for you, and when did you decide you're gonna start writing that story?
That is a good, very good question. And yeah, I think a lot of people have it in the back of their mind where, you know what, someday I want to write a book. I want to
Mm,
write something out. I want to write a story. A lot of people think that and then eventually just don't. And that's completely fine as well because after doing it, it's a lot of freaking work. And a lot goes into it more than I ever thought would. And back when I was a kid, I remember writing books. Like I don't even have it over here. No, I don't know where I put it. But it was a like a 8-page book that I wrote when I was like in second grade. And I illustrated myself, and it was not. It was I was trying to be a great writer back then, but it wasn't the best book. But it's about sci-fi. It was a sci-fi time travel book when I was 8 years old, and yeah, it was called Time Machine. Tim knows because I actually did
yep.
a review on it on the channel. I don't know where I put it.
I
I have
did
it
see that
somewhere.
video.
Where did I put that thing?
Can I just say that's a very, complex idea for a child to try and tell a story around,
Yeah, I must
right?
have like just watched Back to the Future before I
And
wrote that or
you're
something.
like, hold my chocolate milk. I got this."
So, I always dabbled into writing. Always wanted to actually write a book and have something that had my name on it. I actually
Mm,
went down the path of writing a nonfiction book maybe 2 years ago that
okay.
relates to the analytics industry because that's what I work in.
Mm,
And I got maybe 80 pages into it, and at the end of that, I was like, "This is not fun. I'm not having fun in this at all." And I just stopped working on it completely because I was not enjoying it anymore.
right.
And then maybe it was 6 months in the booktube. I was, at that time talking to a lot of indie authors, like you do as well,
Mhm.
and they, going through all those questions with them and talking with them, they made me realize that I can do this if I just try and just, if I want to actually write a story, just go do it,
Yeah.
right? In terms of like what Shia LaBeouf says, just do it. Don't let your dreams be dreams, and just do it. So at one point, I had a scene, just one scene in my mind that I thought looked cool in my brain. I
Mm,
was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try to write this. So I just went to the keyboard, started typing it out in terms of what I visualized in my mind, and then from there it became an entire series, an entire um, outline of what I had in mind with characters and important beats that I wanted to hit, huge plot points that I think personally are very cool. And I know me personally, if I were to read this book, not knowing that I wrote it, I would love it. One because
mm.
it's written for me because I want to. I wanted to read something that had a cyber dragon in it, so now we got it.
Yeah,
We got it
that's
in here.
fantastic.
And that's kind of how it
It
started. A single scene that grew into what it is now.
I love it. I love when authors say, "I wanted this story, I wanted it for me, and I wrote the story I wanted to see." I love that you got a cyber dragon in there too. We gotta read to find out, I'm sure, but that's, you gotta blend some fantasy in there, I'm sure. With how much you read in fantasy as well,
Mhm.
I could see you mixing that in. And, yeah, NJ, you absolutely an inspiring bunch. With that being said, you've had a lot of conversations with authors, as you were mentioning. Is there a piece of advice that you've gotten from an author in all of your conversations that really stuck with you as you were going through that process?
Um, there was a lot of fantastic conversations that I've had. At one point, I had 8 authors on at the same time,
Wow, that's a lot to moderate.
and it was so much fun though, and it was all the break-ins at the time.
Mm,
So we had Callum, Josh, we had Scott on there, and we had uh, a whole bunch of the break-ins. Everyone besides a few of them at the time, at one time, and it was so much fun to talk with them. And the main point of that video was to talk about how to publish an indie book,
mm,
how to market an indie book,
yeah,
and it's getting all those ideas from all of them and getting their insight, their thoughts, and their suggestions and their advice was just so much fun to listen through. And at the time, I didn't announce that I was writing something, so I was also taking notes myself for how I
mm,
should approach um, my own book. Right, I
yeah.
remember ZS Diamanti, which I know, I think you know as well.
Yes.
He wrote Stone and Sky. He had some fantastic ideas in terms of marketing. And one of my questions was like, when you have an idea for a book and you start writing it, when should you let your audience know or potential people know that you're writing something? He's like, last year, let them know right now. Get the hype going, get the ball rolling
Right.
straight away, so people can follow along your journey and also get hype with you along the way. And
Yeah.
I love that whole conversation, that entire discussion of all of them. And one other conversation sticks out a lot because I learned a lot from audiobooks, the audiobook space, and that was Michael R. Miller, who wrote Ascendant and the Songs of Chaos series.
Yeah.
And he talked about how his series really blew up or became more accessible when he had all his books available on audio. And people were, just churning through those books entirely or really quickly because they're on audio. And there's a whole market of people on audio only where they don't even read books on Kindle or physically. So that's why I also wanted to go down the path of, when I wrote this thing, I'm going to look into doing uh, a narrated version as well, which I am doing that as well because I love audiobooks. I listen to
Yeah.
it every single day, and I am ultra excited for that to come out here pretty soon. So yeah.
That's super exciting. I as a reader, I am inclined to agree with the audiobook in terms of accessibility. You do reach a wider audience in terms of people who might not be able to sit down and read a physical or an ebook. But in terms of, I'm sure you have similarities in your life. You've got to do something. You said you were working out. I got chores to do. I can't always sit down and read the amount of time that I'd like to. So audiobooks are huge in helping me get my reading in while I'm still trying to be productive and, wash sheets and clean the dishes and do other things. But um, I know when I'm looking at reading, one of the things I'll check for is if there's an audiobook there. And that just so even
Mhm.
if I can immersion read it or if I can keep listening as I'm doing chores after my little reading session, it's a huge difference, and I know it's so hard, though, at the same time because it's also a huge cost.
It is. It is a huge cost, which I think is definitely warranted, though, at the same
Mhm.
time, especially when you have a narrator who just brings your story to life,
Yeah.
right? And you're tapping an entire market as well who might not read your book. Like, I know we just said that
Mhm.
already 2 times, but it could be worth it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, as a brand new indie author, I know it's definitely hard to stomach that cost because it can run up a lot of dollars, especially when you have a super chunky book like,
Yeah.
150,000 words plus. In my case,
Yeah.
this thing is not that big.
Right.
It's a thriller by nature, and it's right. right under 70,000 words. So
Mm,
luckily, the cost to get this narrated isn't exorbitant, and
right.
I think it's justified. We'll see if it pays off though. But at least I'll have something that I can listen to and say, "Wow, this sounds awesome." So
We'll have to follow up and see what that experience is like because I can only imagine how amazing that feeling would be hearing your characters come to life, right?
yeah,
Hearing the voices, hearing the performance. I imagine it would be a whole new experience for you. Timothy here has a question. Is your upcoming book multi POV, first or third person?
it is a single character, so first person point of view, present tense.
Okay.
Which I know it's really interesting to see these discussions online about POVs and past or present tense.
Mm,
Because I know in my case, I do not see it as a hindrance when I'm reading any POV,
yeah.
past or present. If there is if there's a story there, if there's a connection to the characters, like I'm down, right? It's a
Yeah.
story I'm having fun with. I don't, I don't mind what tense it's in.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see when I had my beta readers read through the story. They're like, "Oh wow, present tense, first person POV. That's interesting. I'm excited to see how you utilize that." And to me,
Mm,
I was like, I didn't even know like that was unique, right? But I
yeah.
think it's growing though. I've seen a lot of people say that they're getting more into it, but at the same time, I see people that say when they read the word "I," it's an instant DNF for them, which is unfortunate.
Interesting. Yeah. DNFs are tricky though. I know some people who will DNF in the first chapter and
Yeah.
others like myself who need to read to the end to find out why I invested so much time in the book and struggle with it. So I don't know. It's a very personal thing. And I don't think there's anything any author can do to make their books more widely acceptable if that's what they're worried about books being DNF'd for something like that in terms of the tense and reading I and going, "Nope, done." Um, I mean, I've had conversations with people where it's very similar. One word and they're like, "Nope, done." Or one concept and they're like, "Nope, done. Don't care for that concept." It's entirely personal and you're not gonna
Yeah.
reach everyone.
No, it's completely fine. Everyone has their own taste, which is, you know, 100% fine. You can read what you enjoy, and if you don't enjoy first person present tense, that's fine too. You know what? Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you're reading for your own enjoyment, or for whatever reason, your own ambitions to read that story. If you
Absolutely.
don't enjoy something, then obviously don't read it, and don't suffer through it. That's the one thing I don't want people to do is to suffer
Yeah.
through a book because then it turns them off from reading completely.
Yeah. It's all about enjoyment at the end of the day. And, we have David here as well. He says, "That's odd. Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb was written in first person." Tim McKay here says, "I can adapt after a few pages or maybe 1 or 2 chapters, so I might have my preferences, but I'm more than open to try something new." And, yeah, Timothy Wolf says Woolman's primary, series is in first person present as well. I'm very similar to you, Aaron, where it never jumps out to me in terms of its, how it's written with tense and all of that.
Mhm,
I'm much rather invested in the characters and the story that follows, and like Tim, I'll adjust. I'll just keep reading. It's, not a make or break for
mhm.
me in that term. Um, Nick here, sorry, I'm just reading this. Just keep shoving popular tropes and trends in, then you'll avoid DNFs for sure.
Hey,
That's the golden ticket.
that's what Michael R. Miller said when he wrote Ascendant. He said, "I'm gonna pack in or stuff in as many tropes as I
Mm,
can into this book, but make it work." And I
right.
think it did, right? So
I yeah, I think so, I'd say so. I would definitely need to continue and find out. In terms of, your own personal inspirations for writing this, what were some of the influences that helped you create this story and build it and build the world and the characters?
you're not gonna believe it. Hyperion is one of
Oh
those
my
books.
I was gonna say Anna Green Gables.
And, So sorry, Tim. I think we might have to take a shot if I said the word over here.
Yep.
So Hyperion, but one story in particular, and I think people will see the where the inspiration is being utilized if they read Hyperion, right? If not, that's completely fine. So I definitely use that as one of my inspirations for a character relationship that is definitely one of the central themes throughout the book itself. And then two, I love the Dresden Files series by Jim Butcher.
Mm,
Because that one, it's kind of weird in terms of Jim Butcher kind of goes back and forth between first person present and first person past, which going through it, I don't see it instantly, but then there's some cases where he does switch it up a little bit. But I just love that type of like serial book where
mm,
each book itself is like almost its own contained story, to where you have a central theme or a central bad person or the central conflict that you're trying to solve with the main character throughout that one book, where there's
mm,
some ideas and plot points that carry on throughout the series with the main character, but it's like an episode of a TV show where you have a beginning, middle, end for that arc or that conflict within the book. And I wanted to capture that as well in my book. So you could potentially read book number one here that I have and be done with the series, right? But there's more. There's a lot more in my brain now in terms of what's going to be out there. So hopefully, people do enjoy it. Um, in the future, there'll be more. Hopefully, if the reception is good with book number one, I'll be ecstatic to keep going with that. So that's one of them, Jim Butcher, and also another one is Ryan Cahill. So
yes.
I know a lot of people in the indie space know of Ryan's work. Um, I particularly loved his novella called The Fall because it's like
Mm,
90 pages of just pure action that
yep.
gets your blood pumping. Right. So I wanted to capture that as well, but in a police procedural,
Mm,
right? Because our main
okay.
character is a detective who is trying to hunt down a suspect, and some crazy crap happens along the way, or he's intertwined into a conspiracy as well. So I tried to pull out the fast-paced action of Ryan Cahill while keeping a little bit of like the grit of the Dresden Files, and then keeping in one of my favorite parts of Hyperion is the relationship building between two characters in my story. So I tried to capture those three and put it into um,
Okay.
one read.
That's quite the epic stack to have behind your back and your book. That's I agree with The Fall too. I haven't read the other 2, but, with The Fall, I don't know, it was my first time ever reading Ryan Cahill. I don't know what was happening in terms of storyline, but it was just all engrossing. I needed
Mhm.
to know more. And
Crazy.
we have, Callum here as well. Welcome, Callum. Sorry, go ahead.
Dirge for Cassius. I
Yes.
got that book in the mail yesterday. I'm so excited to read that one too because Callum also mentioned that Hyperion was an inspiration for him as well
Oh,
for
brilliant.
his book. So, like when you say that word, like you're instantly hooking me. You're like, okay, well, I need to get that book now, right?
And this is why, for marketing purposes, we say, hey, where's your inspirations? What helped inspire you? Because that's how you find like minded people for your books. Another one, recently, I had a discussion with Cameron Johnston. The Last Shield is coming out. That's what he's releasing. And he was talking about elevator pitches, where we were talking about that
Hmm.
because it's one of the hardest things for many authors. I'm for my indie spotlight series, I often if I can't find one, I will often reach out to an author and be like, "Hey, can you just give me a one-line pitch?
Mm-hmm.
Not a paragraph, just 1 or 2 lines." And the messages that I get back are usually, "I ooh, that's really hard. Can I get back to you?" It's a tricky thing.
Yes.
And his advice was to try and come up with the elevator pitch before you finished your book just to have something and try and use comparisons in it, but Try and keep it short. You've got 30 seconds. That's your pitch. Go and try and spend some time on it. But it's, yeah, it's a tricky thing to try and get. But then the stupidest things will get, well, I don't want to say stupidest, but silliest things will catch readers, right? I bought a book because it was a vengeful chicken. I bought a book because of a talking cat, you know? The end of the day, there are some silly things that we will grasp onto as readers and say, "Yep, buying it. Beautiful cover, buying it. I don't know what it's about, but I'll buy it." So, yeah, I know I'm guilty for those things. So,
Mhm.
authors, if you're watching and you need an elevator pitch, it does not have to be perfect. Try and highlight some of the quirky things in your books, and I think that will help too. But in terms of coming back to your writing, I am curious how writing has impacted your reading. Has it changed how your reading experience goes? Is it better, worse? Do you notice more things? Do you care less about other things? I'm so curious.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely changed now. Ever since now that I've also went through a class, a master class by Dan Brown,
Mm,
where he kind of outlined the structure of how to prepare thrillers.
okay.
And now I am seeing a lot of like these points, these things that you should most likely hit on if you want to capture somebody quick and to keep them for the long haul in terms of reading the entire story.
Mm,
So now when I'm reading through any book, I can say, okay, here's our hook, and
mm,
here is where we're trying to establish, a relationship. Here we're trying to establish a contract with the reader in terms of, the author is giving you some sort of promise here in terms of what you're going to get out of this book if you keep reading it.
mm.
And now going through books, after going through that and writing my own, I'm like, uh, whenever I'm reading it, okay, now I'm like just picking it out. I'm like, I see what they're doing now. Okay, so now you're trying to hook me and keep me going, and it's been super interesting going through that class and uh, reading now.
Mm.
In terms of seeing these different elements being pulled in that I didn't realize it when I was reading in the beginning in terms of what are these effective ways to keep people interested, keep people intrigued, making
Yeah.
sure that you're not boring the reader and potentially having them not having a good experience and then,
Mhm.
potentially DNFing. Right. So
Yeah.
it's definitely changed since starting writing and taking that class as well.
Do you find you're appreciating more things from books that you're reading as well, and as a
Oh, yeah.
result?
Writing is hard. Writing
Yeah.
is very hard. And I think a lot of reviewers might not, they might take it into account when writing a review or you're talking about books, but it takes so much time and effort to write something that's one, coherent and
Yeah.
actually presents a story in a way that's captivating. And now, whenever I go through a book that hits me on an emotional level, I'm like, oh my God, one, I love the story, and two, this guy can freaking write, or this girl can freaking write, and I want more of it, and I want to learn from you. I want to see
Yeah.
how you did this. Um, it made me. I even put that in the end of my book in the acknowledgement section, saying that I've learned so much from writing this story as well. Is that there's so much going into writing a book, and that's only just the writing portion of it. All right, there's so
Yeah.
much more to get this book out into people's hands outside of just writing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the marketing, the all the prep in the background, the editing, there's a lot of stages of it. So, I'm glad to hear that it's impacted you reading in a positive way.
Hmm.
And, we've got Jenny in the chats as well. Jenny Wirtz, another fantastic author. We have The
Oh, no
Last
way.
Shield.
Why
Yeah.
not?
The Last Shield has to be the most brilliant title. I'm intrigued right there to give it a shot. There you go. Titles can sell a book too. So in terms of genre, because you enjoy cyberpunk, sci-fi, what is it about those genres that make it so compelling for you?
Yeah, I think I've been a sci-fi person or a sci-fi guy mostly throughout my reading journey. Like I love fantasy as well. Right, I
Mm.
can always get behind some Brandon Sanderson, some sort of my archive, or some Game of Thrones. Um, Another huge, popular fantasy works. It's just something about sci-fi that really just intrigues me more, or I find myself enjoying more. One is because I think the technology aspect of sci-fi really hits with me or hits home with me because I love technology myself, and I love
Mhm.
seeing the ideas that these authors put out there in terms of that they can be, pretty near future sometimes, or they can be way out and far future, or these ideas are insane, but it sounds plausible, which I always love going through that. So I love how, like in fantasy, you can have magic be its own system in terms of having its unique properties, and it can be used in a way to either harm people, or even be used in a way to build things. Um, you're being used practically in like
Mhm.
an everyday sense. And I love how in sci-fi, especially in cyberpunk, technology can be used in a way that can be almost the same thing as magic and fantasy, right? You might
Mm.
have a wizard who can blast off a stream of fire through their wand, or you can have a gun do the same thing in science fiction.
Yeah.
So
It's all
I just love,
perspective.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And sometimes when you're looking at in terms of perspective, one book that comes to mind now is by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Hmm.
What was the book called? I'm forgetting it now. It
There's
was
a
very
lot.
short. It was very. It was like it was a
Was it the
novella.
novella?
It was a novella.
The Elder Race. Was that
Yeah,
the
Elder
one?
Race,
Yes, that one's
where I love
brilliantly
how
done.
that one like captured both um, science fiction and fantasy at the same
Yes.
time, and that to a certain person, technology can appear like magic as well,
Yep.
and I love that.
Ah, I think one of the things that was done really well with that novella was the miscommunication trope.
Yes.
I won't give it away, but essentially there's an entire chapter that is spread into 2 columns, and it's the technologically advanced explanation and the fantasy explanation from 2 different perspectives of characters, and it's so interesting, it's fascinating to see them side by side as you're reading through.
Mhm.
Brilliantly done. So one thing with sci-fi fantasy being blended together and those different perspectives, did you try and blend those in with Falling into Oblivion? Or did you try and keep it more to the sci-fi, cyberpunk, noir genres?
When you read through this, it's very heavily cyberpunk focused in terms of technology being something that is tangible and something that can be in your face, and it can be a little bit brutal as well at
Mm,
times. So there's not really a magic system or things that are obscure in a way. Like when you see something come at you, for instance, a cyber dragon, it's in front of you, and there's a particular reason why.
mm,
And so I didn't really blend too much fantasy into it besides the dragon portion of it and the other animals that come into play.
okay.
Um, because there is, uh, let's just say, there is a there is a gang out there who likes to employ cybernetic animals to do their malicious bidding. Um,
Oh, interesting.
that you get to interact with a couple times throughout the story.
Okay.
So yeah, a little bit there on that, but not
Something
no spoilers though.
Yeah, no, something to look forward to.
Mhm.
And Callum here says any sufficiently advanced magic is indistinguishable from magic. Arthur C. Clarke quote. And we have Nicholas in the chat as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicholas. And
Welcome.
Laura Huey as well. Wonderful to see you both here. So we will be wrapping up shortly. So I will open the floor up to our chat for any questions they might have for you. Folks, if you have questions for Aaron, pop them in. In the meantime, do you have a plan on how to celebrate the launch of your book?
I don't. I do not yet.
Kick
I
back with a
really don't.
drink. Just
So, I was
relax.
thinking of doing like a live stream.
Nice.
I'm not sure if it's gonna happen just yet. I think I actually might be meeting with a bunch of my buddies as well, um, to go just celebrate the book coming out because all of them are very excited for me as well, which is really cool. Because I know sometimes when an indie author pushes out their own book, they're very hesitant on letting their friends know or their family know,
Yeah.
where they don't want to pressure them into reading it. But
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that all my friends are incredibly excited to read it. They want to read it day one, and I think we might be hanging out that day. But I also might want to do something for the booktube as well on my channel to say it's out,
That's
it's available,
fantastic.
right? So, and the arcs are actually going out this coming Monday, which is
Oh,
nerve
exciting.
wracking and exciting at the same time.
You had quite a
Uh,
few people sign up for ARCs as well, if I remember.
I think I'm sending 80 copies out on Monday.
That's brilliant. Congrats.
So it's a lot.
Yeah.
Hopefully the way I'm delivering it is streamlined where no one gets like, oh, I can't download it for some reason. I want to make sure everyone
Yeah.
is able to access it easily.
It's such a tricky thing with technology and implementing that. There's in terms of customer service, right? And looking in that regards, no matter how streamlined you try and make it, there's always gonna be one. There's
Yeah,
always gonna be one.
yeah. I was
But,
telling my mom, I was like, all right, do you have a Kindle? No. Okay. Do you know how to do you know
oh,
how to
no.
download an EPUB file? No, I don't know what that is. I'm like, okay.
Oh, no.
I'm probably gonna have to help her out with getting it
Yeah.
loaded on her Kindle.
Yeah, well, it'll be worth it. It'll be
Yeah,
worth it. Nicholas here is asking, how are you balancing writing and making videos?
it's really hard, Nicholas. Lately, you, if anyone does follow my channel, you can see I have been posting a lot less recently because I have been focused on writing and getting the story in a spot that I am very happy with, which I am like 98% there. Right, I'm
Okay.
so close to being done. I'm actually waiting on this a very small extra couple scenes I sent off to Sarah uh, Korn to do the final pass through on her side. And once I get that back, I'll feel much more happy and more comfortable and putting it out there this coming Monday. But
Mm.
yeah, Nicholas, it's very hard. Um, I've had 3 videos in mind to make for the past 2 weeks, and I haven't done it just yet, right? Because I've been focused on writing. So it's
Yeah.
gonna feel like when the book is finally out and available, it's gonna feel like a weight has been lifted a little bit, so I can
Mm.
focus more on reading because reading has also taken a little bit of a back turn for me, which is sad because I love reading. But luckily, we have audiobooks, so I'm always listening to audiobooks. So I'm always getting a story somehow. But it's hard. It's hard, Nicholas. It's very hard.
Yeah, just try not to go and burn yourself out. That's the biggest
Yes.
thing.
Mhm.
And Callum here is asking, how did you go about making all the crazy new sci-fi tech terms accessible, trying to minimize it being overwhelming?
Yeah, I try in this one. I This is actually like um, a learning point for me coming into writing is that my very first reader was John, who gave me a very uh, let's say blunt review critique on the book, which I'm very happy he did. But I was doing a crap load of info dumping. Right. I was
Mm,
explaining what these things are in a text that was just not engaging at all. And I'm so happy that John pointed all these instances out for me to where now these crazy sci-fi tech terms like this right here on the cover, this crazy electric whip thing is called a
mm,
hypercoil. And the
Mm.
way it's described in the book is through dialogue or past examples of the character using it that gives the context reader on what its purpose is without it being an info dump. So I'm so happy that people told me, you know what? This section sucks. You need to change this, okay? So I'm
It
happy that they did that.
it's good to hear in that regard because 'cause I've been a beta reader, and even having done beta reading, I still, hesitate to be blunt, even though I know it's helpful. I'm like, "I wanna be nice, but
Hmm.
just so you know, you might wanna check this spot."
Hmm.
That's fantastic to hear. Well, I am thrilled to have been able to chat with you about all this stuff. I feel like we touched quite a few topics, and yet we probably could have gone longer with a few others. But we can always go for a secondary chat later on. But in the meantime, congratulations on your debut, getting it out there, still managing everything else going on in your life as well, and the BookTube channel. And where can everyone follow you, whether they're watching now or later?
No, yeah, thank you again for having me on. I had a blast. Like you said, we could have kept talking for a long time, especially if we focus on Hyperion. So
Yep.
in the future, we'll talk about
I'll
that.
read it and we'll come back to it. That we'll make that happen.
Where you can follow me is really any social media now at Bibliotheory. It's the same handle across all the platforms. I'm most active in X, though. That's
Mm.
kind of where I started. That's where I thought everyone was in terms of book lovers. Then I found out there's other platforms out there that are potentially even bigger than book Twitter, book X, whatever you want to call it. Um, so I'm across all that, and of course YouTube. You can find me on YouTube. I am having I have a few things that are lined up for streams in the future, which should be a lot of fun. Like next week, I'm battling two books: The Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio versus Red Rising by Pierce Brown. So putting those two books head to head against each other.
Ooh, that's gonna be tricky.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
excited though because there's like two of my favorite books
yeah,
in the sci-fi genre, so it's gonna be a lot of fun.
absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And just my personal favorite is the bookshelf roasting. So I hope more of those come out in the future because they're so fun.
It was a lot of fun. Hey,
uh,
you have a beautiful shelf,
mm,
by the way. It's
thank you.
a lot of books. There's nothing I can even roast about it. I was actually giving it praise, so I was like, "This thing is great."
As IKEA. IKEA makes wonderfully modular bookshelves that look clean. So all the credit goes to IKEA in the terms of the shelves. But thank you so much again for everyone watching. The links to all of Aaron's platforms and his upcoming book will be in the description. So definitely go check those out. Follow Aaron if you're not already. You're missing out on some fantastic content. And you're just going to have to read to find out what falling into oblivion is all about. In the meantime, thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and take care of yourselves.
So, guys, peace.